Jamie Starr here for the New World News Network. Make sure you subscribe, check the links below for all my other endeavors. And on today's video, we're going to get into the aftermath of the Orlando shooting. The past weekend, you had the Islamic terrorist shooting at Pulse nightclub. You also had the shooting death of Christina Grimmie, where they seem unrelated, but policy-wise, they start to become very interconnected. Now, a lot's going around about whether this was a psyop, a false flag, on what level was it a false flag. I'm, of course, waiting to see if there was a training exercise or if there's funerals. That's one of the ways you can generally tell what's going on if there's a funeral that's going on. There's also these telltale signs I keep noticing where you seem to have a sort of direct link where it's like the underwear bomber, for example, was like the son of a top diplomat. The Batman shooter, he was working, and I think his father as well was in military intelligence. He was working for a DARPA program involving brain and chip implants. And even with this guy, his father, I believe, I saw one article where it said he's running for office in Afghanistan or something. So they're always very tied in. We have had it come out that the person was working as a security officer for a group that is subcontracted by Homeland Security. So he's directly tied in with the government already. So very likely that they just rolled him out to do this. But again, there's a whole level of these where it's not crazy to question if nobody even died. Sandy Hook, for example. Here's the thing. A friend of mine, his father broke down for me, and it's an angle that I never saw covered on the conspiracy videos or anything like that. Children don't often die, right? Because they're kids, obviously. So when Sandy Hook happened, you would have had the town of Newtown, Connecticut, would have had to scramble to get that many children's coffins because, you know, someone dies, funeral's always within a week or two. You would have had to scramble and call all different distributors, and there's only like 10 coffin manufacturers and distributors in the United States. You'd have to call around and get all these coffins for all these funerals in 1 week. Now, at least when we have people like Michael Brown or incidents like that, they televise the funerals. Hell, Michael Jackson dies, they televise the funeral. You didn't see any funerals for the Sandy Hook kids. My friend's father called around. No coffins were ordered to Newton, Connecticut. So it'll be interesting to see because there's a whole lot of people, 50 some odd this time. So there's that angle of it. There's the guy working for the government. There's the fact that it was Ramadan, and you have these top imams coming out and saying it's the compassionate thing to do is to kill the homosexuals. You've had Donald Trump come out, of course, when San Bernardino and all that happened, said this was going to happen more often. The NRA actually ran an ad last week or 2 weeks ago basically telling women and gays, who are groups that the Democratic Party panders to with their identity politics, basically run an ad giving the impression that government can't help you and you should arm yourselves. And then this, of course, unfolds. Another reason why I'm very suspect of it is it's too, from the perspective of, you know, if there was this new world order controlling things and everything like that, it fits perfect on them sort of directing the narrative. And what I mean by that is you would constantly hear conservatives put forth these hypothetical questions about, okay, well, you're cracking down on Christian bakeries for, not wanting to get involved in gay weddings. What about when it happens with Muslims? We all know Muslims are far more homophobic than your average Christian. So that would always get brought up. What about when the Muslims and the gays butt heads? Well, now we see what happens. Everyone gets blamed. The guns, of course, get blamed. And we should have expected that, because that's what they do every other time. Personal responsibility is out the window. So here we see an article. One day after the nightclub killing, Barack Obama came out, said we need to make it harder for people to get guns. Again, this guy was working for Homeland Security as a subcontractor. He went through all the background checks. He was able to, the guns were all legal. So this is so ridiculous. It really makes no sense, except if your objective is to flat out ban certain styles of guns and to make it so that they cannot be held by civilians whatsoever. So here we see this article. We also see Obama come out. And I was actually kind of surprised to see New York Post running this article because it's very to the point. We are to blame, not Islamic terrorism. Just give this a second to refresh itself. And I mean, that's the whole angle Obama is running with on this. That it was a hate crime, that it was anything but Islamic terrorism. So, President leaves the podium after speaking, and of course, because Donald Trump is coming out saying that it was Islamic terrorism, and our president won't even criticize that. Now, of course, this starts to become about Donald Trump. So, Omar Mateen called the cops to pledge his loyalty to ISIS as he was carrying out the mass murder 12 hours later. And that's another thing that's shady to me because, I just can't think how you're in the midst of killing people and then you're like, you know what? I'm going to call 911 and let them know, give them motive. And then the government basically is completely looking right past the motive. Like it says right in this article, we have no definitive assessment of the motivation. We know he was a person filled with hate. So obviously ISIS and his loyalty to a form of radical Islam has nothing to do with it by the president's measure. Here again at Horribly, we have an unmistaken indication that Obama finds it astonishingly easy to divorce himself from a reality he doesn't like. The reality of Islamic terror's war against the United States and how it's moving to our shores in the form of lone wolf attacks. He called it terror, which it is, but using the word terror without limiting a defining adjective is like a doctor calling a disease cancer without making a note of what body of the area is affected. Because he doesn't know where the cancer is and what form it takes, he cannot attack it effectively and seek to expurgate it, which is a great way of looking at it. And Obama has come out and said, well, why does it matter if I call it this or not? It's not going to change it whether I call it this or anything else. So, America's national attitude towards LGBT people didn't shoot up the Pulse nightclub. This country's attitude has undergone a sea of change in the past 20 years. By no way, in case the president hasn't noticed. An Islamic terrorist waging war against the United States has injured 103 people on our soil. We Americans do not bear collective responsibility for this attack. Quite the opposite. The attack on Pulse nightclub was an attack on all of us, no less than the World Trade attack. And again, I agree with all of those sentiments. But they're using this narrative and just running with it towards gun control. And that's why you juxtapose this with the Christina Grimmie shooter. And I've seen articles about that, actually, where some people suppose that she was actually shot for being a Christian because she was very outspoken about it. I've also seen conspiracies that they think Christina Grimmie was a transgender, which is sort of irrelevant in this whole mess of things going on. I think the most important thing to look at is the fact that they will tie it together as a reason to enact more gun control. Obama's on his home stretch, so I really think we're going to start seeing things heating up with all of this. And the crazy thing is, within the InfoWars Alex Jones circles, they've all been saying that. All of his guests have been predicting that this was going to start happening and everything. And, okay, so, before we get into those pictures, Obama was maybe involved in the Orlando shooting. Not what he said, and here's the crazy thing. Trump has this ability, and I have another article, I don't know if I'll attach it to this video or a separate one, where they seem to have taken this stance where these liberals have realized that just mocking him and calling him stupid does not work. These pseudo-intellectual snobs use the stupidest, most childish tactics to try to discredit their opposition. And they finally now realize that it isn't working. Even though Trump does speak in a very plain-spoken, to the point, there are tactics he's using, like the attaching words to the beginning of people's names. Little Marco, Crooked Hillary, it gets caught in your head. Again, he's an expert businessman. He knows simple marketing tools, and that's all they are. Simple marketing tools that all marketers and business and PR uses. Politicians have whole teams of people focus grouping these things for them. And now the media, and I'm getting into it now, the media, though, has realized that it's ridiculing him and calling him simple isn't working. So now their new trick is they're making Trump out to seem like this evil genius where, oh, he's not talking stupid. He's deceiving everyone by his super smart tactics of, neuro-linguistic programming and leaving things open for insinuation and everything. And it's amazing because Trump he'll say something that's kind of open-ended because he knows average attention span is only 7 seconds. If he went out there and just gave a boring speech on policy, no one would remember anything. He comes out and makes a little remark, though. It's kind of open-ended. The media dives into it. Then they ask him questions about it. Then he gets to follow up. Give them it's baiting. It's baiting them into it the whole way through. So, we had an interview. An almost entirely unprecedented moment. Donald Trump, you gotta love the way they frame this. It's even framed in a very snobby fashion. In an almost entirely unprecedented moment, Donald Trump, the presumptive Republican nominee for president, suggested in interviews Monday morning that President Obama somehow been involved in Sunday's massacre in Orlando. Trump's suggestion came by implication, but the message was unmistakable. And I mean, this is the liberal Jedi mind tricks where, they always know what you really mean because they're like Professor X fucking rubbing their temples, able to read your mind. The president may have somehow known about or been involved in the shooting. Not really. I think if anything, he's sort of just turning a blind eye to it. It's like just laying the groundwork and letting what's going to happen. He doesn't get it, or he gets it better than anyone understands. It's one or the other, and either one is unacceptable. And that's, like I said, he's either turning a blind eye to it, but Obama also has the whole intelligence apparatus at his disposal. It's come out, of course, that the State Department, run by Hillary Clinton, did shut down investigations into the mosque that this guy was going to. So the FBI was looking into him, and then they were told, stop. Same thing with San Bernardino. So they're complicit. Donald Trump is not wrong in that statement. So, look, we're led by a man that's either not tough, not smart, or he's got something else in mind. And that something else in mind, people can't believe it. People cannot. They cannot believe that President Obama is acting the way he acts, and he can't even mention the words radical Islamic terrorism. There's something going on. It's inconceivable. There's something going on. And this, even just in terms of, the thing with the powers that be is there's always multiple narratives, and that's the easiest way. I explained this when I talked about the other shootings, and I talked about what I call the Swiss cheese stories, where it's like the old cartoons of a rat and a block of Swiss cheese, and you see the rat crawling through the different holes and everything like that. That's what these stories are. They're a giant block of Swiss cheese, and every time you're looking at it, you see one hole, you're looking through another. So I think that, the whole, like Barack, whether Michelle or not is a tranny, he's calling her Michelle, or Michael. I think it's intentional, because it sends people down these rabbit holes, and there's something, whether Michelle's a tranny or not, it's irrelevant to what he's doing to the country. Is he Islamic or not? This is something we've never gotten a straight answer on, but him not mentioning radical Islamic terrorists would lead you to believe. Just as far as, let's just, he's gone through the traditional things. He wears a ring. There's no God except Allah. Yes, some of these are photoshopped. But there's a handful of these that we do know, like the pictures here, are actually from his past. He went to Muslim schools growing up. So he's been educated in all this stuff. He is a Muslim. But more so, I think he's a politician, and I think he's a sociopath. I think he's whatever is most beneficial for him at that moment. If it's beneficial for him to be a Christian when meeting with the Pope, he will take on the role of a Christian. He's more of an actor, if anything. So, Swiss cheese stories. Those are the ones you gotta look at them from afar, because otherwise you'll end up down these rabbit holes, and you'll spend too much time on unproductive ideas. So, the idea the president is a Manchurian candidate, a mole or an agent for jihadism, is a stunning accusation, even by the standard of a presidential campaign in which Trump has delivered a series of breathtaking statements, from comparing a rival to a child molester to being unable and unwilling to differentiate one of his policy ideas from Nazi policies. This is so amazing because the Nazis were a socialist party who enacted gun control and crazy socialist ideas. So, and it's amazing. There's another article I have where they do mention, they try putting the spin on it, and that's all the news is at this day and age. It's masters of spin. Where they actually admit that the refugees, first they claim that we're not being welcoming to refugees. Then in the second paragraph, they claim we're bringing in tens of thousands and we're keeping them in concentration camps. Remember, Donald Trump didn't want to bring them in the first place, so Donald Trump equals no refugees in concentration camps, yet he's the one they constantly compare to a Nazi. It makes no sense. And the only thing I can, it's so brazen. I get so bothered by it. But maybe my attention span is longer than 7 seconds, and I'm actually able to, connect these things. I know I'm not the only one out there. There's people who comment on my videos. I've had people offer plenty of alternate angles that all are also plausible. And another thing is, you can't always, sometimes it's better to deal with things in terms of a level of plausibility rather than whether it's factual or not. Because from, my position, I'm not going to know declassified documents. I'm not going to know any of this high-level, top-secret stuff. So it's much better to look at things as, okay, well, this is one plausible narrative. This is another plausible narrative. This is the mainstream narrative. And then to just see which one kind of pans out. So here we get into all of the trying to equate Trump to a conspiracy theorist, the birthers. They try to bring back these other things that it's sort of this associative mind trick where they figure, if you were repulsed by the birther concept, if we just tie this on, then you'll be like, ugh. When I covered the last thing on Donald Trump, the conspiracy candidate, that was Rachel Maddow's whole article, where she was just like, Donald Trump, Alex Jones, Sandy Hook denial. Donald Trump equals Sandy Hook denial. Bad Donald Trump. Like, I mean, that was essentially it. So, next article. Alex Jones claims Orlando was false flag attack due to Muslim migration, yet shooter was born in the U.S. Everything. And this is so funny. How, isn't it amazing how the left, like, you could have one lone nut shooter go out and do some stuff, and like we have with this, and Obama will say, we're all responsible. Everyone is to blame for this. But then if you bring out a Muslim and you're like, oh, well, this Muslim guy did this. But not all Muslims. Not all of them. Like, it's such a picking and choosing, you know, as far as this all or nothing, every time, all the time. I hate people who talk in absolutes because nothing is ever like that. So, everything far-right website InfoWars claims about the Orlando shooting Muslim refugees in Arab Spring is false. Oh, like them saying shit like this was going to happen? I mean, that's the crazy thing, is they're even replaying it, where 2 weeks prior they had top Pentagon sources coming out and saying stuff like this is going to start happening. They're planning attacks for Ramadan. They even listed off 6 cities, and Florida and Orlando happened to be one of them. So, our government and the governments of Europe allowed these huge hordes of radical jihadis in, and even allowed them in without vetting them on record, landing them on airports without checking them, etc., etc. Orlando shooter was actually a U.S.-born citizen, not a refugee or migrant. He was born in New York. The exact opposite of what Jones claims about Muslim refugees and migrants is true. And this, you know, I feel like is a very minor thing, because it doesn't matter whether you were born here or you were not born here. It's an ideology that is doing this to people. It's not your geographic location. So, in Europe, governments are forcing refugees in squalid camps and subsequently deporting them to Turkey, where their lives may be endangered, and deal with that. This is where they're saying that they're doing the complete opposite. Former Greek finance minister and left-wing leader Yanis Yakorovitz, I'm obviously probably butchering that, has gone so far as to call these militarized camped refugees concentration camp. Why are the people in the camps militarized? I think this is what the complaint's about. That we're bringing in all these military-aged people, and then we're keeping them together in concentration camps. Of course, that would militarize them. Like, what the fuck? Is anyone else seeing the extreme disconnect here? Like, how you can go from, again, Jones and InfoWars saying this stuff, we're bringing in these people, they're staying at these camps, they're getting radicalized and militarized, and then you start to go to the end of the article, and they're saying the Greek finance minister went to these camps and noticed absolutely everything that Alex Jones is saying, but we're saying that Alex Jones is wrong about everything he said. Listen to this. The U.S. has been particularly unwelcoming. In September, the White House pledged to admit 10,000 Syrian refugees over the next year. How is taking in 10,000 Syrian refugees unwelcoming? From one sentence to another, there's this extreme disconnect. But let's remember, this is Salon, and they're known for nonsense. As of May, 7 months into its pledge, Obama had resettled just 1,736. Germany, in which 1/4 of the U.S. population, took more than 1 million refugees in 215 alone. More so, when refugees are allowed to enter the U.S., they face an incredibly long, invasive, and bureaucratic vetting process. No, they don't. The head of the FBI and the other head of, I don't know if it was Homeland Security or what other agency, came out and said they cannot properly vet them. They said this in front of Congress. I mean, this is insane. Oh my God. So let's go to more insanity. All right. Well, here these are some of the holes in the Swiss cheese story. Like Sandy Hook and other shootings, you've had people mention that there were multiple shooters. There was a news clip where an interviewer said that there was more than one people on there. This again leads down the narrative of there potentially being a drill. There was a drill at a Fenway Stadium over the weekend too, where they had the whole thing locked down, bomb sniffing dogs and everything like that. So it's funny how, these things always kind of coincide. I don't know if maybe, again, if the timeline it was on Dabu 777's channel, if it was after the attack and they were doing it, as a reactionary thing or what. I don't think so, because that would be an amazingly quick scheduling thing. But so you have this report saying that someone was holding the doors and preventing people from getting out. I believe you did have one of these survivors come out and say that they barricaded the doors behind them. But again, there's a plausibility that all the survivors and all of that they're just paid crisis actors. Again, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it's a plausible, this stuff happens. Why did they carry out a mass shooting in a gay nightclub? Well, like I said, it allows them to control narratives because people were bringing up this idea of Muslims and homosexuals and them butting heads. This, of course, goes into the idea of patsies like Lee Harvey Oswald and such. Let's see, anything interesting in this? Who and why did they really do it? It ought to be quite obvious by now. Obama was put into White House to master and accomplish his 5 primary goals. Enact Obamacare, restart the Cold War with Russia, crash the economy, promote gay marriage, and nullify the Second Amendment. If those are his goals, he's doing a good job. He's been wildly successful at achieving 4 of these goals. The last one has remained elusive. This particular challenge has not been met because of lack of presidential initiative and personal will, however. He just hasn't found the right formula necessary to unlawfully abrogate the Second Amendment. So many false flags executed during Obama's second term have been engineered, from Sandy Hook to San Bernardino, to do that just incidentally. Let's see, there's another point. Oh, yeah. Another thing I had heard was that Americans are safer under Obama than they've ever been. And I believe this was in one of my earliest videos where I had found a clip that compiled together all of the FBI's mass shooting numbers. And there are more mass shooters. Again, the wording, mass shooting, different from normal shootings. It depends how many people are killed and things like that. And they play that trick where they want you to think that gun crime is on a rise when it's really on a decline because mass shootings have gone up. There's more mass shootings under Obama than every other president combined. How does that equal safer? It doesn't. So, now you've had the biggest mass shooting period, second biggest terror attack to 9/11, they're saying, all sorts of stuff. How does that equal safer? I'd love to hear a response, but it doesn't matter. They just come out and say, you're safer. Let's see. Came out and said he was a lobbyist. Trump wrote some sort of connection. Yeah. So let's get into these now. Top Republicans join Obama in condemning Trump's words. So, of course, they're saying, and the whole time through this article, you continually have them saying, Trump said, ban all Muslims, which he never said. And this is the crazy thing where they can take a lie, create a lie, and just keep rolling it out for months and months and months and months because they know they're idiot believers are believing the lie. I mean, it's like Hitler wrote in his book, you have to tell a lie so big that the normalcy bias kicks in and people just can't believe it. And at this point, these are sort of compounded lies where it's like, you couldn't believe your government's arming ISIS and funding them and everything. So, of course, then we can just bring them in and you can believe there wouldn't be a problem. Just mass bringing these people in. There wouldn't be a problem with this. And then, compounded on that, when someone says we need to stop this, you can just be like, well, they're saying ban all Muslims, which they never said. They said we need to stop bringing in refugees until we can properly vet them. There was a clause at the end of that. So, in separate appearances, both Obama and his presidential successor, likely Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, blasted Donald Trump's proposed ban on all Muslims from the United States as dangerous and contrary to the nation's traditions. We put Japanese in internment camps during World War II. I wouldn't say it's contrary to traditions by any measure. A visibly angry, and it's also funny though, is because you would have these same leftists be like, America's the worst place in the world, white supremacy, we butchered Indians, we did this, we did this, we did this. And then, of course, when it's, when it's convenient for them, then it's, Americans' traditions are opening and arms open, warm and fuzzy. Like, they can just switch it on a dime. There's no set stance with these people. This is dealing with sociopaths. That's what this is. Obama, like I said, he's an actor. But if he's not an actor, he's a sociopath. Hillary Clinton's definitely a sociopath. They will do and say whatever they have to control the situation and the people around them. A visibly angry Obama also dismissed Trump's repeated demands for him to use the term radical Islam when speaking about Orlando shootings. Calling a threat by a different name does not make it go away. This is a political distraction. Clinton, I'll tell you what's political distractions. Every time Obama goes on Kimmel or does one of these cutesy White House videos where he's like, well, what am I going to do when I'm out of the office? Smoke cigarettes? And also, as far as I was saying about them saying Donald Trump is like super smart and all this stuff, here's the thing. Donald Trump knows what he's saying and everything. Hillary Clinton, everything she says is focus grouped. Obama's the same thing. Everyone remember Obama's sort of winding, backmasking, Baptist church being like, and we'll get our nation back on track. Yes, we can. And it's, yes, we can. I mean, it was like, come on. And it's so funny. I'm sorry I'm getting so jumbled in all this. It's just aggravating. It's aggravating to see all of these assholes. They do all of these tricks, and if anyone else does it, then they're going to accuse you of doing it. The left are the ones that are supposedly, science, science, science. They're the ones that want to quantify everything and turn it into a science, like gender studies or anything like that. NLP is a bunch of fucking bullshit. Yes, there are some ways to talk to people it's called being a better speaker. It doesn't mean that you're using some scientific method and a nefarious purpose to try to trick people. People had been speaking this way, and it had been drawing people into it way before it was ever quantified into some sort of science. But now that they have it, they can of course be like, oh, well, this person's using this deceptive tactic on you that we all use, every commercial you've ever seen uses, all of your news pundits use, and everyone else does. But this person's bad for doing it. And they might not even know they're doing it. Anyway, Clinton described the Orlando rifle with conspiracy theories and pathological self-congratulations. Yeah, because people said this was going to happen, and voila, it happened. So, Paul Ryan, of course, denounced Trump for trying to rally support for his anti-Muslim policies, while others castigated Trump for the accusations he had lobbed at Obama. It's not anti-Muslim. It's trying to avoid the blowback of Obama and Hillary's failed foreign policies. I do not think a Muslim ban is in our country's interest, Ryan told reporters. I do not think it's reflective of our principles, not just as a party, but as a country. He called for a security test, not a religious test, which is what Trump called for. We need to properly vet these people because of security, not religion. Trump said Syrian refugees, not Muslims. So again, this is all taken out of context. It's a runaway train. Traditionally, when it's time to rally people around our country, it's obviously not what occurred and is very disappointed. Leading national security talk, run out of adjectives for Trump. I don't think he has the judgment or the temperament, the experience to deal with what we are facing. These people are so good at saying a whole lot of nothing. I mean, the other proposed solution is, what, gun ban? I mean, that's the crazier thing. If you look at the directions they are going, like, Donald Trump is at least going the right direction. Like, we have to deal with Islam. We have to deal with the radicalization of it. We have to deal with ISIS. Obama's like, we need more gun control. And then I can't believe that the media could even, like, hop behind this and be like, oh, yeah, they're really taking Donald Trump down. So, here's another one. Trump came out saying Obama was more focused on Trump than the mass shooting. He was more angrier at me than he was the shooter. He imitated Clinton, stumbling over a scripted speech. Yep. We're led by stupid people. We're not going to be fools anymore. They're not stupid. They're complicit. If they're shutting down investigations into mosques and terrorist groups, what's the rationale for that? Honestly. If you have the FBI that, were in a war against terror, they're looking into different mosques and everything. I mean, the worst that could happen is they look in and the investigation turns up with nothing. But instead you have the State Department telling them don't look any farther. What's the explanation for that? I can't think of one. I don't know. And so they're obviously complicit. There's no reason an investigation should ever be halted. So, all of this stuff, a Swiss cheese story, again, we can deal with the narrative of what happened, but there is a level of it where it all very well could be a Hollywood production, and hopefully someday that comes out. This, I'm gonna do another video on this and the NLP thing where the guy was on Mars saying Trump's like a hypnotist. But just we'll see how this unfolds. See how many more holes are in this block of Swiss cheese. Again, the basic of what you need to know is a guy who's a subcontractor for Homeland Security, who also went to a mosque where they said kill gays and Christians, who also frequented the gay nightclub and obviously was feeling some sort of guilt about his own sexuality, decided to go on a shooting spree. That is what the news will have you believe. Did people die? Was it an actual shooting? We'll know if we see funerals or not. But the whole thing is shady. And it's amazing that our administration is using this to try to focus back on gun control when it was all legal guns. Whole thing's a mess. We'll see how it unfolds. These are just my thoughts and what I've kind of gathered thus far. But like I said, I think the most important thing that's going on here now is that the controllers and the people in power and the leftists and all that have now been able to grab the narrative of how they're going to deal with the Muslim and homosexual groups and their little, because they're the ones that like to divide everyone up. What happens when two of their little groups have a conflict, and now they're able to control that? And the obvious answer is to blame their political enemies, not even to address their two groups, but to just say, hey guys, still back us, we'll go after those other people who had nothing to do with it. Or we'll go after the firearm, which is just an object. Objects can't kill people, but whatever. So, everyone, subscribe below. Check out my other endeavors. I'll have lots of new music coming out soon, so I hope everyone will enjoy that. And, Have a good one.